try to pass the floor to Oliver. Let me share my screen if I can. So Oliver, as told, is strongly involved in standardization as well, and he will present a topic that is quite a little bit related to the last question. So how to migrate or integrate XDS CDA based infrastructure to FHIR infrastructure. But Oliver can say more precisely than me, so I will give the floor to Oliver. Let me and so the floor is yours.
Everyone, and thank you for letting me show you what we do in Switzerland around health standards and how we are trying to evolve our standards from the XDS CDA to a FHIR world. So I think Michael has shown a nice how the landscape is. So this will be more kind also of technical issues. I hope it will not be too technical, but otherwise add questions or I'm trying to help you. So very shortly for my person, I'm doing consultants around healthcare, interoperability, mostly FHIR today, and I'm in that role also the technical manager of HL7 and participating in IHE. So this week we are present at the IHE Connectathon. That's also the red t-shirts. I thought Italy has the same colors on your background on the slide, so I won't change the t-shirt. And what we have done in Switzerland is we are building up a national record system of the patient. So this is, I will show later, based on XDS, and the content profiles, the first were defined in CDA, but we face the challenge also that we want to have apps connected to these ecosystems, and that the industry was asking for FHIR-based exchange formats instead of CDA exchange formats. So the Swiss electronic patient record is an initiative which started, I think, around probably the first concepts around 20 years ago. And since the last 10 years, we were trying to build up such a system. So the electronic patient record, that should be a collection of your treatment-related documents. The healthcare professional itself, he files these documents in your electronic patient record. You as a patient are the owner, and you decide which healthcare professionals may read which documents. It's free, so in the sense that you are not obliged to have an EPR. You can choose it or you don't have to choose it. And we have a law behind it, and this prescribes how the EPR must be organized and technically secured. And this is also quite difficult in Switzerland because the healthcare is financed by the states. So it was not possible to build one electronic patient record systems, but we had to build up an architecture which allows that each state could potentially run its own electronic health record system. And this process started, and the good thing is, with some delay, or even one could say some years of delay, different communities, certified communities actually, are starting now up. So we have the first patients in different states which can open up their electronic patient record, and hospitals can now start to fill in this data, or other health professionals. It was a long way, but it finally, slowly, the people can sign up for going for it. And as I said before, this architecture had to be decentralized. So we have a community where all the patients stay. Then if you want to provide a healthcare professional portal, And in addition, especially for the patients around it, how you can identify health professionals, how you get the metadata, and you have to talk to the other communities. And to build such a system, maybe you could do it yourself, but Switzerland has decided very early on to participate this initiative on standards. So we set up on this IHE profiles to build up such a system. So what you've seen here, we have different actors defined for all these different meta actors, and the communication is done through IHE profiles, and the different communities have to verify during certification that they are using this IHE profiles and people can connect to it. The way we tested that is that we have so-called projectathons, which is a similar concept to connectathons, but more on a project-based levels. We do this every year now, so that also for new projects or for parties which are coming later into can test their systems, can verify their systems, and then in a second step, if they need to, can then also certify their systems. So we will have our next event in Bern in September. And what we have seen is that in the around mHealth, we were not up that the system like this is built with this cross-document sharing system is not very well suited for if you have app developers and they want to connect them to the system. So very early on, eHealth Swiss, that's our organization, similar to NICDIS, what we heard before, made a recommendation what kind of technical standards we could use in Switzerland for evolving and extending our system. They come up with 3 different recommendations below the continua guidelines, smart on FHIR, and extend the ordinance of the EPR with the ability to use mobile web technology. And this is what we did then. So we were working also this time based on existing IHE mobile health profiles, especially the IUA, PICS mobile and mobile health document, that we can add the capability that mobile applications can connect to this Swiss EPR. So how we describe that today is that we, in parallel of the legal documentation, we are also now working with FHIR implementation guidance, what we have to this profile. We hope now in September that we have different companies participating at the project, looking if this specification are correct, and we can get the feedback, evolve our specification, and also the participating companies have trust that this specification will be sound and will be also in the future supported. So this is more based on the API level, so that we could access the XDS environment with an API. But the other challenge we had also, or we still have, is how we can come from the CDA document level world to the FHIR world. So in Switzerland, there was a lot of activities in the last year around IHE pharmacies content profiles. So they have the different content profiles defined, and we based our specification also on Art Decor for it, what we have for kind of specializing in terms of the Swiss requirements, because we have specific identifiers and specific route codes, etc. And then kind of wish from the industry that they want to have this data also in a FHIR version. So we were working on writing implementation guides that we can transport the same information like we have in the CDA documents equivalent in the e-medication documents. And to enable this, we were working on mapping, because actually these are 2 standards by HL7. So we hope that should also be possible, that this information can map between 2 standards which are from the same organization. So we first wrote an implementation guide for all these different documents where the conformance resources are defined. You see here a classical, not a medication document, a CDA document, but then you have the equivalent concept also of a FHIR document. So a FHIR document is more or less a bundle which has then the different entries inside, but you have quite some similarities to a CDA document. And then you can to start the mapping. So on a CDA level, this mapping on the first two levels, it's not very complicated. So you can very easily map the metadata and also the different coded section. Where it gives a little bit more work is when you have all the different, we call this in CDA templates, or then profiles in FHIR. So if you go really down to the structured meaning of the substance administrations and medications, then it gets a bit more specific to the template. So you have to write this per hand. I also would assume that you have to write this by, for each template, the maps yourself. You cannot do a general model mapping. We used for this approach the FHIR mapping language. This is a part of the FHIR specification. And this allows you, they had made a CDA logical model which describes CDA into the FHIR world. Then you can write maps, and these maps are then used by a mapping engine, and this allows you to map CDA to FHIR and back. This is how the CDA logical model works. So we have defined all the CDA classes which are there defined in the RIM, and especially also the data types. And with this, you have afterwards the ability to write maps. This doesn't give you an API, but it gives you the possibility, for example, also to validate if a CDA document is correct according to this logical model. You author then the maps, so you define mapping instructions. This has its own textual representation. And what you can do then, you can convert this map to a FHIR structure map, which is a FHIR resource, which you then can also distribute with your implementation guide so that others can use and execute the maps. And to execute such maps, you need a mapping engine. FHIR defines a transform operation that you can do such mapping, and you need a mapping or a server which enables you afterwards that this mapping can be done. Currently, there are different possibilities available. So on one side, there is a mapping, a reference implementation available. In the Java world, the Java validator, there are commercial solutions from FHIR available. There are also other approaches. This is not yet a huge economy or community, so this is slowly starting up, but getting more support by the latest months and years. So in our project, what we did, and these maps are also publicly available, we started to write this map between the different CDA and FHIR documents to check that we, because some participants in Switzerland will probably also work with CDA documents, or we have projects which they work with CDA documents. So we had to do the maps in both directions. So from source to the target and back from CDA to FHIR, FHIR to CDA. So we check that now the maps, that the information we have in the source document gets transferred to CDA and back, so that at least we know that it's correct, because we cannot completely do a model-to-model translation. So we check it on the information we really want to have mapped between those two formats back and forth. And so in the end, this is what a future interaction with our Swiss EPR could be, also in terms of medication. So instead of using the IHE, XDS and Farm1 transactions, which are SOAP-based, we propose for lighter application that we have kind of a mobile access gateway with this support for the IHE mobile profiles that you can do then get your patient ID based over an HTTP query, retrieve your medication list, and if it's based on CDA, you can do afterwards the conversion to FHIR. So this is ongoing work. There are no production systems yet in implementation. We are still working on the specifications, but we hope that at least in a few years this will be required, and that we can start having apps connected to our Swiss EPR ecosystem. So that was my last slide. If you have any questions, do not hesitate. I think I had some Zoom message that the connection was not so good. I think that's probably the usual IHE connectathon experience with the shaky Wi-Fi. So please apologize. I hope it was working okay, Giorgio.
No, it was great. I mean, that I've been able to follow, and thank you so much. It's really very interesting. I'm quite sure that there are a lot of people interested in that topic, because we receive a lot of questions about how to migrate from CDA to FHIR to keep the two infrastructures together. So I'm looking for questions from the audience, because I'm sure that there will be some. Waiting for that, I have a question. In your infrastructure in Switzerland, do you have a single XDS infrastructure, or do you have different cooperating, like an XCA infrastructure? I mean, that is, you have a single repository? Because I was thinking, when you move to the FHIR, how do you supposed to have different FHIR server that cooperate together, or a central FHIR server for the? Because I'm thinking to Italy, in which we have 21 regions that owns their own system, and we need to be able to query potentially things that are owned and managed by the different regions. So I don't know if you have a similar thing to deal with or not.
Yeah, we have the similar case. So it looks, at the moment we have 5 different systems, and it will be probably 10 or 15. And each of the system is our own XDS affinity domain and communicates to the others via cross-community gateways. So we have a federated IHE system. The approach connecting them with the FHIR API at the moment, because a patient has only one system where he assigns himself as kind of master patient system. And so the approach for connecting the apps is now that you offer this FHIR API to this community, where he has his, we call that reference community. So you have one FHIR interface for the app for his patient. But then in the back end of this, so this is not a FHIR server, so this would need to make these queries into the other communities for the data if you want to have the FHIR API. And I think the other thing is how you federate FHIR servers. This will be a complicated topic. I think IHE ITI is starting to looking a bit into it, but this is, I think, a lot of work is waiting us. There for us. So.
It seems that we have a lot of shy people today. So because probably we will get in touch with you with additional questions after this meeting, because I'm sure that a lot of people is really interested in this topic. So it's been really a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for joining us, even if you are now involved in the IHE Connectathon. And hoping to learn more from you in the next future. Thank you so much, Oliver.
Thank you.
For being
Bye.
with us.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.